Hi, I'm Brian DePasquale. I'm a recent hire in biomedical engineering. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about the work that I do in my lab, developing machine learning tools and neural network models for deciphering neural algorithms. So I'm what's typically called a theoretical neuroscientist. So I get the privilege of taking a really wide view and thinking about large problems in neuroscience, how we can understand how brains work and how they relate to the kinds of machines that we build. So in a lot of ways, it was very natural for me to be part of this talk. Yeah, zooming out a little bit, I really do think quite a lot about the way we design artificial intelligent machines and the way that biological intelligence is designed. And I think that we are in an interesting moment where there's a lot of comparisons being made between the brain and artificial intelligent machines. I think it's really important to step back and recognize the ways in which the brain is not like the kinds of machines that we build, and how we can really focus on that to try to understand how brains are built and how we can use some of that information to design artificial intelligent machines. So, I mean, I don't study these two particular points, but it's really obvious very quickly that these are not the same types of things. Artificially intelligent machines consume lots of power. They require lots of data. That's not true for brains. Our squishy mess of neurons typically can run on relatively low power, and we can learn things really quickly. So just very quickly, you can immediately see that brains are not like artificially intelligent machines. But if we can study brains in using the tools that we use to study artificially intelligent machines and develop them, perhaps we can get a little bit more insight into what's going on with biological intelligence. And so I really do this in two ways. I develop machine learning tools to try to understand what algorithms neural circuits use. And I think about this in a very broad context. So I'll talk a little bit about this in context of decision making, but this really applies to all types of behaviors. And the second is I try to understand how neural circuits actually instantiate these algorithms. Brains do not have the same kinds of resources that artificially intelligent machines do. They have to solve problems with their own sets of constraints. So developing biologically plausible artificial neural circuit models will allow us to understand how brains do this and how this relates to what artificially intelligent machines are doing. So I've typically been thinking about these questions in the context of decision making. Decision making is a great problem that our brains solve really well. Unlike Chand, I just do one half of what he does. So I collaborate exclusively with experimental neuroscientists who collect data and kindly let me work on their data with them. And hopefully I bring a little bit of extra secret sauce to the machine learning stuff in addition to that. So these are data collected from former collaborators. These are rats performing a decision-making task. There's an auditory stimulus that is played to the left and right ear. They have to count the number of stimuli that are played to the left and right and make a choice depending on which side had a greater number of stimuli. And then my colleagues go in and record from all these different brain regions using all these different types of techniques, optical or electrophysiological techniques. And the question for folks like me, theoretical neuroscientists, is to try to understand what algorithms are these brain regions instantiating when this animal is performing this computation? How do these brain regions interact with each other? And how much of the complexity of the data can we describe simultaneously? So I'll just tell you a little bit about one project that we did in relationship to that. So I developed a machine learning model that I won't tell you about because I won't dive that deep into the details. But essentially what we're trying to do is to uncover the algorithm that two different brain regions are employing when animals are performing this decision-making task. And I'm showing you dynamics of that model in purple and red. What those different trajectories are is not super important. This is the latent dynamics of the neural population activity in these two brain regions, much like Emily described. And what's striking from this model, once we fit it to the data, is we can see that these brain regions are doing this in a very, very different way. So the purple brain region is basically what we call the late committer. So this animal is accumulating information over time to make a decision, and it waits as long as it can before it makes a commitment to which of these two choices it's going to make, which is exactly what you should be doing on this task. The other brain region, on the other hand, is an early committer. So essentially, after a very short number of stimuli, the animal immediately begins to commit to its choice, which you will recognize as not the thing that this animal should be doing. So this is just an example of how machine learning analyses can kind of uncover these algorithms from different brain regions. Ultimately, we are interested in building models that combine information from multiple brain regions to understand how the whole brain gives rise to this behavior. And what's really interesting and important to recognize here is that the brain will often, I'd say probably more often than not, use unconventional algorithms to solve the types of tasks that it's performing, very much not like the kinds of machines that we develop. So I think artificial intelligence really has to recognize the fact that the brain is not doing things often the same way that, that the machines that we develop are. So I have about 30 seconds left. So the other half of my research is really focused on trying to understand how we can build a bridge between biologically realistic neural network models and the kinds of algorithms and neural circuit models that artificial intelligence groups develop. So I developed a body of work mapping these two things so we can have a clear understanding about how artificial intelligence algorithms work and how they can be implemented in biophysically realistic neural networks. And ultimately, this will allow us to hopefully understand how real neural circuits work by building in silico artificial models that are biologically plausible. Thank you.